Dear guests, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to return virtually to Boston University and address you today. Unfortunately, I cannot be there in person as I was in 2019, but I look forward to my next opportunity to join you physically. I have many fond memories of my time at Boston University when I was Hubert Humphrey Fellow back in 1987-88. I'm humbled by the opportunity to again be speaking and engaging with my fellow BU alumni. Boston University is the beacon of light on the Charles River in the heart of Boston, one of America's most historic and important cities. Today, our 415,000 fellow alumni span across 180 countries. However, no matter our background or where we are in life today, all of us are bound by our shared experiences at the BU. Whether we know it or not, we have all been shaped by the principles that inspired Boston University's founding 183 years ago. That higher education should be accessible to all, that research, scholarship, and professional life should be conducted in service to the wider community, local and international. Boston University's legacy demonstrates the power of an international institution with human interests at its core, much like the multilateral institutions I have contributed much of my life toward. Shortly after I completed my Hubert Humphrey Fellow program from BU, I was posted by Chinese Ministry of Finance to the World Bank as alternate executive director for China. My experience at Boston University set me up for a life dedicated to strengthening global multilateralism, to creating the peaceful cooperation that is essential for the economic development that lifts the people out of poverty and into prosperity. The spirit of multilateralism might seem like an invisible concept to some. It might even seem airy-fairy to the more skeptical mind. The significant benefits of multilateralism can be easy to discount. For many people, to paraphrase Joni Mitchell, with multilateralism, they won't know what we've got until it's gone. We must go back to a time before the practicing of multilateralism to understand its significance and why we should all be extremely motivated to protect it. Our multilateral system originated in humanity's traumatized conscience during the Second World War. This was the time when whole societies, from heads of state to the ordinary people on the street, understood the desperate need for a system of broad consultation and coordination to peacefully address the major challenges that face the countries across the world. The first and most salient multilateral effort in global governance was the post-World War II Bretton Woods system, which established institutions that have contributed enormously to development and poverty reduction of the past decades. These institutions have traveled on the bumpy road taken by the world economy, yet their contribution to global economic development and financial stability is well recognized. History has shown us that multilateralism is an effective way of mobilizing resources and facilitating development. It can bring tangible benefits to the people of the participating economies. The global and interconnected nature of challenges facing the world today call for solutions that transcend national borders. Multilateralism facilitates such interaction and helps sustain a rules-based global order. However, the multilateral approach to promoting development, that is, through a governance system acknowledged by all members of the international community, has been met with growing skepticism and resistance over recent years. Traditional support for multilateralism should not be taken for granted. Today, multilateralism has entered a state of crisis. A backlash is underway, and it is profoundly eroding the liberal values underpinning the multilateral system. Multilateralism is under attack precisely at that time that it's most needed. The specter of a Cold War looms large in our global consciousness. We are witnessing a trend of deglobalization, decoupling, and the rapid unraveling of compromise and trust built over more than half a century. Nothing is more destabilizing than decoupling and global economic disintegration. And nothing is more disastrous than individual economies working in silos, whether it's due to outside forces or self-imposed. Humanity is confronted with danger as crises converge around us on multiple fronts. Among the numerous issues, the most pressing ones are achieving more effective global governance on the climate agenda and continuing to respond to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic that continue to be felt. These indiscriminate existential threats do not respect the borders. The world is approaching multiple precipices: climate, ecological, geopolitical. More than ever, the international community should do their best to reverse the inward turning trend if we are to give all of humanity, especially our poorest, the best shot at a prosperous future. Governments must look beyond their own borders and work together by strengthening economic integration and connectivity. It is only through our strengthened bonds that we will safeguard the hard-won gains obtained over the last couple of decades. Progress is only achieved by civilizations that work together over the longer term through the organization of our efforts into collective projects instead of remaining stuck in local, sectional, or tribal factions. As a Chinese national involved in Sino-US bilateral dialogues in economics and finance for the last 4 decades, I have tried to push for a sound, healthy, and a mutually beneficial bond between our two peoples over the years. I continue this even today as the president of AIIB without compromising my duty as an international civil servant. Over my career at the World Bank, Asian Development Bank, Chinese Ministry of Finance, and private sector organizations, I have engaged with many American governmental institutions, regulatory bodies, think tankers, as well as financial institutions and businesses, and enjoyed meaningful cooperation. More recently, the relationship between China and the United States has become a little bit tough. Perhaps it's an understatement. Challenges that seemed possibly temporary have, through the upheaval of COVID-19, hardened into a durable trend. However, as misunderstanding and ongoing disagreements pose challenges, the need for cooperation only grows. Global economic integration has been one of the biggest drivers of improved living standards and poverty alleviation in human history. Indeed, economic cooperation and integration between China and the United States over the last 4 decades have allowed both countries to grow rapidly, with spillover effects benefiting the rest of the world. Now, these two countries need to find new ways to cooperate despite the differences. The long-term challenges we face today call for solutions that transcend national borders. An effective approach to fostering certainty against the backdrop of uncertainty is to strengthen cooperation on a global scale and to urge the economies, developed and developing, stay engaged. I am an optimist, and I believe that we have seen worse times through recent history. We all made it, and it became even stronger thanks to coordinated efforts of all parties. Never have global governance and international cooperation been so important as they are today. The world has no choice but to work as one if we are to overcome the immense challenges that confront us. And cooperation between big powers is most crucial. I have seen the evolution of multilateral banks through my experience working for them, from the World Bank to ADB to AIIB. I have seen how a well-governed multilateral organization can become a global organism. It lives in an ecosystem that gives to each other and depends on each other. It is symbiosis on a financial, political, and global scale. Amid these multilateral headwinds, we must recognize the important role multilateral institutions play in continuing to maintain cultures of international cooperation. Even when you see major disagreements or conflict between countries in the newspapers, the same nationals are working together within the many organizations that make up the multilateral system. This quiet cooperation at the human level fertilizes the relationships, skills, and opportunities needed for continued cooperation at the international level. During these tough times we find ourselves in, multilateral institutions become a redoubt for continued cooperation. Multilateral institutions must now focus on getting fit. This new era demands the muscular reshaping of systems and policies to address the climate and geopolitical challenges we face today. If this occurs, I'm confident that multilateral institutions can adapt to these times. A future without multilateralism is too chillingly bleak to be worth contemplating, especially for those vulnerable, fragile, and small developing members beset with troubles such as high indebtedness, poverty, environmental degradation, and at the mercy of climate change. In an era of great power competition, multilateralism provides smaller countries with a channeled voice and influence they could not otherwise exercise by themselves. We at AIIB embrace fresh ideas and diverse concepts. Resolving the tension between contradictory views provides greater insight into the true nature of an issue. This enables us to formulate policies and strategies that better support the national efforts to realize their net zero pathways. This is why AIIB's governance was structured to give developing members a larger voice. Within the planetary stakes so high for humanity, all ideas that help achieve sustainable development, no matter how unconventional for some, should be food for thought and digestion. By paying more attention to these under-examined experiences, we can learn new policy lessons that will help humanity to realize our moonshot toward net zero. Before I close, I'd like to offer some thoughts on the role of multilateral development banks with stormy economic seas in view ahead. With interest rates rising rapidly, improving debt sustainability is all the rage. It cannot be just a passing fad. For many developing countries that face tightening fiscal conditions, debt financing will remain an effective method to fund the critical infrastructure required for continued economic and social development. However, in this turbulent environment, creditors and debtors in both the public and private sectors must work in close collaboration to help highly indebted countries navigate out of the economic woods. As ever, sustainable growth remains the most assured long-term pathway away from indebtedness. However, help must be offered to highly indebted countries to ease their debt service burden today, to protect their investments in infrastructure for tomorrow. the near future will test the resilience of the macro frameworks countries have put in place. The multilateral infrastructure and the international financial safety net, AIIB is part of this framework and will work to ensure that multilateral system can rise to these extraordinary economic challenges ahead. Thank you very much.